Welcome to another episode of
KSPorts
hosted by Samson, Kimani,
and Marco Indri.
talking about another week of football. Got not as many headlines, but one or two injuries, some weird stuff going on. First, normally it seems like every week we got something interesting, non-football related, and this one is not as joyful. When Mason Rudolph got knocked out, pretty much.
No, he did. He was KO'd.
He was pretty much knocked out.
He was KO'd.
Yep. The medical cart was actually broken.
Oh.
And they weren't able to bring out the cart. Now, of course, the media sensationalized it, saying how could he? I saw one quote where it was like, I guess $15 billion a year isn't enough to get a working medical cart. But actually, the NFL came out with a statement saying that if he did need a cart, there was a backup cart, and Tomlin did say that he didn't really need a cart. But that was interesting. And I mean, obviously, you never want to see anyone injured, but it was still kind of sad to see that their medical cart wasn't fixed. Like, what if the backup was broken?
I was gonna say I saw the picture of them carrying him off the field, and it just looked weird. I was like, I haven't really seen that. I didn't even know the cart was broken. It looked bad though. He was KO'd. Then he got the concussion, I think, because he whacked. Unless he maybe had a minor concussion, then it just like went extreme. Because I don't know if you saw the play, but he was KO'd, and then his head whacked the ground hard.
Yep.
And then I see the picture of him getting carried off the field with his old helmet, so that could also been a factor. But they obviously took off the face mask, but you could just tell by the style of it was an older helmet. But yeah, it was a gross injury. It looked bad.
And then next interesting thing, Jay Gruden got fired as Redskins coach, which is weird that they don't do it. They didn't fire him later in the season, at the end of the season, like normal, like Black Monday. But there is a chance, just speculation by me, like nothing I saw online. It would make sense if they fired him over him not starting Dwayne Haskins because he really didn't want to draft him. And then when his quarterback went down in Case Keenum, right? Yeah, Case Keenum.
Yep.
He still didn't want to start him, and he had Colt McCoy out there, which we've already seen Colt McCoy's ceiling, and it isn't that high.
No.
So it doesn't make sense to play him. So it would make sense for the organization to get rid of Jay Gruden, who already the team was 0-5. So there's no point in keeping him. And if he's refusing to play the young players, then you might as well get rid of him now instead of later, I guess.
Yeah, Case Keenum is starting this week, I saw. And I don't know, did Case Keenum get hurt? Was that the deal why Haskins came in?
Yeah, I think he was hurt.
Okay. Here's a report 27 minutes ago. The Redskins could trade Dwayne Haskins. But I don't know. I mean, Alex Smith had the gruesome injury. He'll probably try and come back. He obviously won't be as good as he was. He was insanely average, if not better.
Yeah.
Case Keenum, again, insanely average this year. So I guess I think it's smart to start Keenum. I say wait on Haskins. He didn't look too incredible. He didn't look anything like Danny Dimes when he came in. He looked all right. He looked what we probably would have thought. But yeah, they're 0-5. Yeah. Obviously, firing the head coach wasn't a surprise. But yeah, Case Keenum to start this week, I guess. So.
Yeah, I mean, it made sense for like them to start Haskins when Case Keenum was hurt,
right?
And like you're trotting out Colt McCoy,
especially since he was the first round pick.
Yeah,
and then they tried Colt McCoy. Obviously, we knew it was going to come from him. It wasn't 3 interceptions, like I said in the last podcast.
Yeah,
it was 1, but I mean, still, it's Colt McCoy. We all know what's going to come out of him.
Yeah, and then Hill is questionable to play in the next game.
Tyreek Hill,
Tyreek Hill, even though he probably will after Chiefs loss, which we'll get into later. And Vontaze Burfict's suspension upheld. Surprise, surprise. NFL's like, yeah, you gotta go home the rest of the season. And then Gurley may not play in the next game. It's a day-to-day. He didn't practice today. So there's a chance that the Rams won't have him, which will factor into their game. And then
we were just waiting on that Gurley injury too. We were waiting.
Yeah.
They've been driving Gurley, and Sean McVay knew it too. He knew he was working Gurley hard,
playing with house money.
And here it is. He's injured, so it's tough.
And then Rudolph is back in practice. He's in the concussion protocol right now, and he was limited in practice. So that's it for the headlines. You had any, Marco?
I didn't really have any, other than the fact that Jalen Ramsey might play Sunday.
Oh yeah.
Their owner came out and said that they expect to play him. He's been practicing and all that. And speaking of practicing, another headline due to injury. Christian McCaffrey didn't practice this week. I'm assuming it's due to injury. I don't think it's due to a holdout.
Yeah, they said
like
they usually give him actually Wednesdays off.
Oh, okay, now. Which is good because I mean, I'm gonna save it for later. We'll save it for later.
But yeah, I did forget about that about Jalen Ramsey. Apparently, the owner had a heart-to-heart conversation with Jalen Ramsey, and yeah, he expects him to play against New Orleans. So we'll have to see if that defense can shut down the Saints. But moving on to the games, let's just jump right into the Thursday night game, which we wanted to talk about but didn't really get into. With Russell Wilson, even with a pretty rough O-line, it's still a star. 268 yards, 4 touchdowns. And the main reason why the Rams stayed in this game is because the Seahawks have a pretty bad secondary. They're 28th in passing yards allowed. So, I mean, Goff, he did have 1 touchdown, 1 interception, but he had 395 yards. I mean, he's going to throw that ball almost 50 attempts. But when when their main attack is passing and you have a pretty bad secondary, I mean, you do give the other team a chance to stick around. And Gurley still, he wasn't used as much, but he still had 51 yards, 2 touchdowns. And, the Rams had 2 wide receivers who had 115 or more yards this game. So they should have won this game if the kicker had made his field goal. But the Seahawks did give him a lot of chances to win this game. But the kicker missed the
Especially at the end when, like you just said, the kicker missed the game-winning field goal, Greg Zerlin for the Rams. But, I mean, Russell Wilson, like you mentioned, proving his case for MVP this year. 17 for 23, 268, and 4 touchdowns. I think you may have mentioned that. He was only sacked once. I don't think I've ever seen a time where Russell Wilson isn't scrambling.
Yeah.
He had a rating of 151.8 that game. Close to perfect. I do see that they gave Chris Carson 27 carries. They only passed the ball 23 times to Russell Wilson. I can't lie, I didn't really watch a whole lot of the game.
Yeah.
I maybe watched the first quarter, then a little bit of the third and fourth and whatnot. But I don't know. I don't really like what I see there. I think that Russell Wilson, again, being an MVP candidate, hasn't thrown an interception yet this season. He's the first quarterback in the Super Bowl era to throw for 1,200 yards, 12 touchdowns, 0 picks in the team's first 5 games. Maybe they should throw the ball more. Jared Goff, like you mentioned, 49 passes that game. He threw over 50 against the Buccaneers.
Yeah.
And they're still giving Gurley 15 carries a game, and he's still getting hurt because he's injury prone. But maybe not give the ball to Chris Carson 27 times on the ground in a game. He still had a good game, 118 yards. It didn't have any touchdowns, but as he should, 118 yards on 27 carries. But maybe they give the ball to the MVP a little bit more. And maybe they won't have to put themselves in a situation where the Rams may have won the game because of a game-winning field goal. So I guess we could maybe get in the MVP case.
I mean, yeah.
Right now. I was going to mention about Christian McCaffrey, how he has more total yards on the season than the Jets as a team.
Yeah.
However, the Jets did have a bye week, but we do have to recognize that it is an entire team. Mm-hmm. And we're talking about one single player in Christian McCaffrey, so there's his MVP race. I just talked about Russell Wilson, and then obviously Patrick Mahomes is my third candidate for my top 3.
Oh, you have him as third?
Yeah, probably third in the race. I mean, he is leading the league in pass yards at a little over 1,800, and he was just 1 touchdown shy of being in the same room as Russell Wilson for being the only quarterbacks in the Super Bowl era with 12 touchdowns, 0 picks, and at least 1,200 yards in the team's first 5 games. But Patrick Mahomes fell just short with 11 touchdowns this season so far, but still obviously has a case for MVP like last year when he did win MVP.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just proven it game after game after game. Unfortunately, lost this week to the Colts. We'll get into that. But, the MVP race is heating up.
Yeah,
like I mentioned with Russell Wilson, since we're still on the Seahawks game. If you're listening to Pete Carroll, back in Super Bowl, 51?
Yep.
49, whatever it was. They made the mistake and they passed the ball. They didn't give it to Marshawn Lynch up the gut. But now they're starting to hand it off a little bit more than they should have. I think that with Russell Wilson not throwing a single pick on the season, let's throw it more than 23 times in a game, especially when you're about to lose to a game-winning field goal.
And him being able to produce that much stats in 268 yards and 4 touchdowns in 23 passes.
And only 17 completions is impressive for sure.
Very impressive. But yeah, my MVP race is kind of flipped. I have Mahomes, Wilson, and McCaffrey, but I have all the same people, same reasons as Marco put.
Real quick, I want to touch base on this MVP race. Okay. I guess I almost forgot the most important thing. As much as I want McCaffrey to be number 1 in the race because he has more total yards than a single team, It's a quarterback league. I think we all know this. It has been for the last few years now.
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes won it last year. I mean, and it was his first year technically. I mean, he started a game in his rookie season, but last year was truly his first year as a starter, and he wins MVP. It's a quarterback league. Right now, it looks like Russell Wilson's probably going to win it. If I were to guess, maybe more towards the end of the season. There's only been 5 games.
Yeah.
Mahomes is probably going to end up winning it again. But right now, McCaffrey should. Russell Wilson has a case, like I mentioned, but it's probably going to end up being Mahomes again, looking at it right now. It's a quarterback league, unfortunately. McCaffrey should win it.
I mean, there is a chance Wilson could win it because, first of all, voter fatigue. I mean, you never want to give more often than not, they don't want to give the award to the same guy more than 1 year. And then second of all, Wilson does have a case of having not as many weapons around him. Pete Carroll is a good coach, but he's not as good offensively, or making an offensive plan like Andy Reid. So Russell Wilson might have the case of, I've been running around for my life the whole time. I mean, before the last 2 games, Mahomes was protected pretty much all the time. He was almost never sacked. So, and he has great weapons such as Kelsey and Robinson and Sammy Watkins when he's healthy. So, I do want Mahomes to win as a fan, but as an analyst, I feel like Wilson does have a better case, especially if he continues to put up stats like these, and if Pete Carroll's like, hey, maybe we should throw more than 23 times in a game. That'll be interesting. But speaking of the Jets, the Eagles destroyed them. 31-6. They had 10 sacks on them. Brandon Graham had 3 of his own. They also got 2 interceptions and 1 fumble for 2 touchdowns. So Wentz also had a touchdown, 189 yards, but that defense is looking pretty good. I mean, it is against the Jets, but you still have to go and do it. So it's interesting to see that defensive line still some there from the Super Bowl run. Did you have anything about this game? Or?
Yeah, we talk a lot about the Eagles doing this one week, but not that, and then the next week they do that, but not this. For example, last week they decide to run the ball with Jordan Howard. They give him 3 rush touchdowns. Doug Peterson goes, oh, okay, we don't need to stress out Carson Wentz as much as we thought we did. Then this week, 10 sacks, the defense goes off. It was against Luke Folk. Yeah. They had 2 picks on him. They had the fumble recovery, like I think you mentioned. Yep. And then again, the 10 sacks, which is huge for any defense ever. 10 sacks in a single game is huge, and that's hard on a quarterback. And that's the Jets' 3rd string. Yeah. They would have been down to the 4th. They are getting Sam Darnold back this coming week.
The GOAT.
The greatest of all time.
Yeah,
but
But
I mean that's tough on a 3rd string. They got to figure out the line. The Jets have a lot to figure out other than the defense. Really, the defense is solid. They're a little bit average, but obviously the offense needs some help. Sam Darnold might be the guy. I beg to differ. Samson obviously is his favorite player of all time.
Yeah, you know how it be.
So, but yeah, like I said, if it's one thing with the Eagles, it's not the other, and vice versa. And I mean, Wentz only throws for 189 yards, a touchdown, no picks. He was only sacked once, which is good. Again, Wentz is getting hit way too many times for as good as that line is. Yeah, good game for the Eagles defensively. Obviously, they needed to win this one against the Jets because it's the Jets, and if they lost to them, they're big trouble. A lot of hopes and dreams would have went out the window probably to a loss to the Jets. So
that's true.
Eagles deserve to win. They're the better team by a mile.
All right, next game, Jaguars versus Panthers, and as we've already talked about McCaffrey, but hey, you can never talk about enough stats. All right, Marco?
Right. Yep. Love the stats.
So let's give some stats why McCaffrey is at the very least the best running back. He has the most total yards at 587. He's averaging 7th in averaging yards at 5.6. Most yards per game at 117. I think 3rd most or 2nd most touchdowns at 6 of them. Or he's tied for 2nd for the most touchdowns. And I mean, he can do it all. He had 176 yards and 2 touchdowns rushing, and 61 yards and 1 touchdown passing. So he's either way. He's a powerful guy. He can take a hit, but he also has the speed to get away, which mostly puts him above other guys such as like Kamara, who he's a great passing running back, or really good passing running back. But once he gets through the tackles, he usually gets stuffed up there. It's usually easier to bring him down. But I have another take about a guy on the other side of the ball, or not other side of the ball, but on the other team. Most underrated wide receiver in DJ Shark. Talking about how the Jaguars don't have any weapons. let's look at the stats.
Yeah.
Tied for second in touchdowns, tied for fifth in most total yards, and tied for first in most big plays and defining big plays as 20 plus yards receiving plays at 10, and tied for sixth in yards per game. So I mean, he's right now being a great option, whether it's Nick Foles or that first game he caught a touchdown from, or Gardner Minshew. I mean, he might be riding off of that Minshew magic, but right now, don't sleep on my man's DJ Shark. He's getting it done, and I mean, it's been showing. The Jaguars, I mean, they're right now winning close games. Now, they did lose this one against the Panthers with that tough defense, but don't sleep on the weapons on that in the Jaguars team.
Yeah, Gardner Minshew had a great game. Like you said, Minshew magic. 374 yards, 2 pass touchdowns, 0 picks. Only sacked twice. He also had 7 carries, 42 yards. The dude is doing it all. Minshew magic, of course. Obviously, DJ Chark did his thing. But yeah, Christian McCaffrey, we've touched base on Christian McCaffrey plenty. Kyle Allen's doing just enough, I'd say. I mean, he's coming in and filling the role just like Brissett and over in Indianapolis. He's doing just enough. He isn't playing bad. He isn't playing good. But yeah, McCaffrey and that defense really elevated them past the Jaguars in that close matchup.
All right, and then next game, I'll touch on it briefly. Vikings against Giants. I mean, the Vikings won 28-10. And I mean, the main reason why Kirk Cousins won this game was because he just had a better team around him. I mean, he had 306 yards, 2 touchdowns. Daniel Jones had 182, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. But I mean, he has Dalvin Cook. He has probably top 3 wide receiving duo. Probably top 3 running back and a better defense. So I mean, it wasn't that hard to figure out why the Vikings won. They're just an overall better team. And yeah, did you have any thoughts on this game? Or
other than the fact that the Giants are trash, Vikings should have won.
Yeah.
Cousins goes out and silences the haters. 22 for 27, over 300 pass yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 picks. Solid game. Again, obviously Dalvin Cook is the team. He did his thing, 132 yards rushing, and then the defense obviously was, plenty to stop the Giants offense, who, again, didn't have Barkley, and this week won't have Barkley, Ingram at tight end, Shepard with another concussion, or maybe that's Corey Coleman. I think it's Shepard.
Yeah.
Shepard with another concussion. I mean, it's looking bad for the Giants.
Next game was a big game for the Texans, 53-32 against the Falcons at home. Watson, for once, didn't get sacked, had some decent protection, could actually open his eyes and have accurate throws down the field, was 28 of 33. Mm-hmm. And for all you doing the math at home, that's only 5 throws he missed. 426 yards and 5 touchdowns. And because of those deep throws, he was able to get a guy to his fast dudes like Fuller V, who had 217 yards, 3 touchdowns on 14 receptions. And Hopkins, his 100th game, has caught a pass in every single game he's played. And he had 88 yards. So Watson showing that if he has protection, maybe he can be an elite quarterback. I mean, this was at least an elite game.
Yeah, let's not forget that the Falcons have no defense. They have no D-line especially. So this game really came down to whether Watson and his O-line is going to be able to capitalize on that opportunity, and they did. You mentioned 28 for 33. That's truly incredible. 426 pass yards, 5 touchdowns, a perfect QBR for Watson. So, again, capitalize on the opportunity. Then Will Fuller, 14 receptions, 217 yards, 3 touchdowns, has 53 fantasy points this week. Incredible. A guy who I actually dropped. I drafted, but I dropped him. Probably wouldn't have started him anyway, so who cares? But, yeah, the Texans capitalized on the opportunity of the Falcons having one of the worst defenses in the league, one of the worst defenses I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, that's true. And next game, Bucks at Saints. In this game, even though the Bucks lost, looked like Winston is still being consistent. There's hope for him to be at least average, better than average quarterback, at least not a bust. He had 204 yards, 2 touchdowns. And the last couple games, he's been playing well. In the last 4, he's been playing against tough teams. I mean, Panthers, Giants, Rams, and Saints. So he's been averaging like 2+ touchdowns a week, and 250 to 300 yards. So this year has definitely been an uptick for Jameis Winston. I mean, the complicated offense of the Saints was just too much for that Bucs defense. I mean, there was one play where they handed it off, where Teddy Bridgewater handed it off to Kamara, who threw it to Taysom Hill, who who knows what position that guy is in. I mean, he's all over the place. So, I mean, it was mostly Sean Payton confusing the other team. Teddy Bridgewater, I mean, he still played well. I'll let Marco talk about his guy. But that offense was just too much for that Bucs defense.
Yeah, Teddy Bridgewater's still doing his thing. He's undefeated since being the starter, not since coming in, because they did lose to the Rams when he came in for Breeze after that injury. But since being the starter this season, he is undefeated, like I thought he was going to do. I didn't think he was going to go 6-0 in these next 6 games with Breeze out, but I knew he was going to hold it down for New Orleans.
Yeah.
And he's doing just that. Buccaneers honestly was a tough matchup because they've been hot. I think if Winston's listening to any sports podcast, it's this one, because after we bashed on him, he came out and doesn't throw an interception against the Saints secondary. Yep. Like you mentioned, he's looking insanely average. He throws for over 200 yards and no interceptions, like I mentioned. So, I mean, Winston's looking better, but obviously the Saints are the better team. They win the game. Bridgewater's holding it down for NOLA.
Next, I'm going with the Bills versus the Titans. And the Bills defense, oh my goodness. The Bills defense, finally, we've had a couple weeks. So about this time, start looking at stats that they do have. Third in allowed points per game at 14. Third in yards per game at 275. And they mostly did stop the Titans. I mean, they didn't. Their run defense isn't as good. If anything, I mean, they're top 10 in run defense while they're top 3 in pass defense. So that's why with Derrick Henry on the other team, they did get a touchdown. Derrick Henry had 20 carries for 78 yards and 1 touchdown. But mostly the Bills, they're going to grind it out. I mean, they held the Patriots, was it last week, I think, to 16 points. Mm-hmm. I mean, they almost beat them if they had Josh Allen. So the Bills, you can't just walk over them like you used to.
Yeah, the Bills are top 5 defense, if not top 3 this week. They only allow 13 pass completions from Mariota. They don't pick him off. Mariota still hasn't been picked off yet, but they did sack him 5 times. So I'm just waiting for Mariota to get that infamous injury yet again. But Bills' defense holds it down. Big reason why they won, because they only put up 14, and the offense looked great. 23 for 32 from Allen, 219 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did have the pick. Frank Gore goes out and rushes for 60. Allen also adds 27. Yeldon adds 15. I mean, the offense, I guess, not great, but they did well. And at the end of the day, they put up 14. But again, that defense, insanely good this year. Their only loss comes to the Patriots. They only allow 16, like you mentioned. So the Bills are looking great. I don't know. I don't really know what they need, because they're doing well all the way around on the offense, and the defense is great. So somebody's going to have to step up on the offense. It just can't be. I mean, defense wins championships, sure. Yeah. But there's also an offense and a special teams.
They need an elite playmaker.
They need an elite playmaker on the offensive side. They get rid of Zay Jones. They trade him over to Oakland. Mm-hmm. I don't know who the guy's going to be. Frank Gore's old. It's his last season. If not next year's his last season. I don't think Josh Allen's going to be able to do it, if not for another couple of years. Who's it going to be? TJ Yeldon? Cole Beasley? Probably not. I don't know who it's going to be, unless the defense can really. I mean, I have never been a believer in defense wins championships, but if the Bills win if the Bills win the AFC Championship this year, or even if they go out and win the division over the Patriots, then sure, defense wins championships. But this is going to prove why defense really doesn't win championships, and there's also 2 other sides to a football game.
Yep. Now, so couldn't skip the next game because, my man's Kyler Murray's playing. Finally got that win against the Bengals. Murray in this game used his legs a lot more. Had 93 yards, almost 100 yards rushing, 1 touchdown, and he had 253 yards. He's right now second at most rush yards at 206. I think Lamar is he's first at 400 and change. So, but right now with the Bengals 0-5 and that stadium looking pretty empty, trade talks for AJ Green are starting to be, and in fact, he said he was ready for us. So, what do you think, Marcos? Should they get rid of him?
Well, I mean, if you start the season 0-5 after these last few years, they've choked in the playoffs time and time again. The offense honestly doesn't look terrible. I think bringing AJ Green back isn't going to be like a situation with the Bills where they just need that elite playmaker to switch things around, because in Cincinnati they don't have a defense whatsoever. So maybe they do trade AJ Green. Maybe they get a solid young guy out of him, whether it's a receiver, tight end, maybe even a running back if they don't want to stick with Joe Mixon. Maybe even a quarterback. Maybe when they bring in a young quarterback, they say Andy Dalton has to hit the road. And then they get those few picks for later on. They build a defense. I guess, maybe they trade A.J. Green for an elite defender and some picks for down the road and fix that defense. Because like I mentioned, offense doesn't look terrible. Andy Dalton doesn't throw an interception all game. He completes 27 passes, 262 yards, 2 touchdowns. Joe Mixon did rush for 93 yards on 19 carries. Not bad. Tyler Boyd goes out there, 10 catches, 123 yards and a touchdown. They got a great young guy in Tyler Boyd. They just extended him, too, coming into this season. Tyler Eifert, I don't know what his deal is. 2 catches, 14 yards. He's been terrible all season.
He hasn't been.
Like I mentioned, that defense is absolutely terrible. So I don't know what's going on over in Cincinnati. I don't know if Marvin Lewis being gone is really that game-changing for them. I don't know what the deal is. They're 0-5. They're probably the second worst team in the league. I think it's probably fair to say let's get A.J. Green out of there. It's only hurting his legacy.
And we'll have to see if Zach Taylor can pull it together. A.J. Green right now is 31 years old and last year of his contract. So, I mean, there is a chance he could come back this season. So if they trade him to a contender, maybe we could see him in the playoffs like the Bills. They could make a move for him, trade some of their young pieces. But moving on to next game, Pats at Raiders, 33-7. Pats still haven't allowed a pass touchdown. Now, yes, they have allowed 2 rush touchdowns. One was Josh Allen barely jumping over the pile. But the second one was during in this game, and watching it was weird because there were like 5 defenders right next to the guy, and he kept on running. They had like a brain fart. They're all standing there staring at him, and he kept going. But this defense, beyond that, has allowed least points per game, 6.8. And, that gap is so big between them and second, which is Bears at 13.8, that it's the gap for Bears to the next one is 10th with the Broncos. So right now the Pats are barely letting anyone score, but they also have a really easy schedule.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see. But they did get an interception and a fumble recovery. But, yeah, that defense mostly keeping them afloat, even if Tom Brady he hasn't been as good as his former self. I mean, for him, he's been pretty average, but that defense making sure that this team stays elite and undefeated.
Yeah, they played the Steelers, they played the Dolphins, they played the Jets, and they played the Bills, and then now this week they play the Redskins, who had 0 wins coming into this week. They've beat, 3 teams? The Jets haven't won a game all year, have they?
No.
They've beat 3 teams who still haven't won a game all year. We're just waiting for that Cincinnati game. And their next 3 games are Giants, Jets, and Browns. I mean, it's an easy schedule. We're just waiting for that pass touchdown to come along. But, yeah, the defense is keeping them afloat. Like we mentioned multiple times this podcast now, they only put up 16 on the Bills. So the Bills' defense is legit. So is the Patriots. But Tom Brady's really going to have to show us what he's got left in the tank, if any.
Yeah.
He is 42 years old. We've been waiting for him to slow down. It hasn't come recently. He wins the Super Bowl last year at 41 years old. But maybe he is starting to slow down. I mean, he did throw 348 yards, 3 touchdowns last week, but against a Bills defense, he only throws for 150 yards. So he's wishy-washy.
Yeah.
They are undefeated still, but again, easy schedule. It was an easy win for the Patriots against 0-5 Redskins team now. So
next game was Ravens against Steelers, and the Ravens win this one in overtime. This was definitely an interesting game to see. But the defense mostly, Rudolph was missing throws before the hit. But even without him, they still were fighting. Hodges had a couple good throws, as a backup should. And the defense had 3 interceptions, 5 sacks for a loss of 22 yards. And Rudolph for the game had 131 yards, 1 touchdown. But the Ravens closed this one in overtime. What do you think about the game?
Yeah, Lamar Jackson comes out and says, I don't like to run. I'd rather sit back in the pocket and throw it. He completes 19 passes on 28 attempts, only 160 yards and a touchdown. Then obviously, like you mentioned, the 3 picks. But he runs the ball 14 times for 70 yards, which isn't bad, especially for a quarterback. So maybe and he was sacked 5 times. So obviously the offensive line just was outperformed by that D-line over in Pittsburgh. So obviously for them to win in dominant fashion and like they won early in the season when Lamar Jackson was proving his case for a possible MVP candidate. The O-line's gonna have to hold up, otherwise they're gonna cut it close versus a team like the Steelers against a third-string quarterback or a second string, let alone then third string comes in. Delvin Hodges, he plays all right. Yeah, obviously nothing crazy. He's a third string for a reason, but I mean the offensive line's gonna have to hold up for Baltimore if they want to actually seriously win games, especially come playoff time.
Yep. Next game was Bears at Raiders, and Raiders squeaked this one 24-21. And the Bears defense actually looked weak for once, especially that run defense. Josh Jacobs ran all over him, 123 yards. on 2 touchdowns. And the Bears, if they had Mitch Trubisky, they might have won this game. But with Chase Daniels, he was okay. I mean, he had 231 yards, 2 touchdowns, but he did have 2 interceptions. But the main problem was for the Raiders is that they really did need to run that ball because Derek Carr didn't look that great. He had 229 yards and 1 fumble. But if you look, that 1 fumble was kind of like a huge miscommunication. It was like a shovel pass, but Josh Jacobs was already halfway to the offensive line. So he's just like chucking it into like just the backfield with no one there and him fumbling and trying to get it. And obviously the Bears defense got it. So it was a rough day for Derek Carr, but Josh Jacobs coming in clutch for the team.
Yeah, Josh Jacobs was the big reason why they won that game. Bears were huge on David Montgomery. We've mentioned this once before on the podcast, and I'm going to say it again. Bears were huge on Montgomery in training camp. He had 11 carries for 25 yards. He did have a touchdown. Yeah, so be it. But he's nothing crazy. Tariq Cohen is barely getting any carries. He's only gotten like 20 carries on the entire season, or like 17. He's had like 20 receptions.
Yeah.
I don't know what the Bears are doing on offense. They lose their defense coordinator to the Broncos, Vic Fangio. But they didn't lose the offense coordinator as far as I know, so I don't know what they're doing if they're trying to switch things up. But it's obviously not working. Like you mentioned, Chase Daniel did all right, but the 2 picks was huge, obviously. And the Bears lose to the Raiders. So, again, another team and the Raiders, very confusing as well. Looked garbage, looked like hot garbage coming into the season, especially after those first few games. And then they top off a Bears defense, and Josh Jacobs runs all over him. So, I don't know what the deal is for either team. Raiders look like they're coming back. Bears look like they're on the decline. We'll see. It's only been 5 games.
And I think Josh Jacobs is definitely affirming his case for offensive rookie of the year because Minshew Magic is great, but Josh Jacobs is like carrying his team to wins. Like he really is carrying them to wins.
And Minshew really is only hovering around the 200-yard mark. He isn't completing a lot.
Fournette too.
Yeah, and his completion percentage isn't very high. Josh Jacobs really is carrying the Raiders to these wins.
And then next game is your boys. The Broncos against the Chargers.
I don't know how they did it. I don't know how they did it.
A couple upsets. Who was the one who said last week? And guess who it was? Your young guys blossoming. I told you need a rebuild. Phillip Lindsay, 114 yards, 1 touchdown. And Cortland Sutton, one of my favorite wide receivers, 92 yards and 1 touchdown on only 4 receptions. Defense had 2 interceptions, 3 sacks. But still, you guys are still a young team. You had 12 penalties for a loss of 122 yards. So you do have stuff to clean up. But I think your guys are showing up.
Yeah, after those first few games, I was a little nervous for Lindsay if you guys listened to the first few podcasts because it looked like he was going to have a sophomore slump. But I don't know if you mentioned this, but he goes out, rushes for 114 yards, and gets a touchdown. So Lindsay looks like he's doing a lot better. That's obviously a huge contribution. Flacco's playing like old Joe Flacco, like everyone would have expected. But defense goes out, doesn't even allow a single pass touchdown out of Phillip Rivers, who is having a phenomenal season in my opinion.
Yep.
They hold Melvin Gordon to just 31 yards after he comes back. Austin Eckler only gets 3 carries and 7 yards. So defense came up huge. I see here Eckler did have 15 catches for 86 yards. That's huge.
That's a lot.
So obviously the Chargers had a few checkdowns to Eckler, as we can see. So Broncos secondary stepping it up. Lindsay stepping it up. I like to see it. We are 1-4. Kind of a bummer. Lindsay's been on my bench because it looked like he was having a sophomore slump, but maybe I need to start him.
Maybe
I need to
trust your guys.
But I do also have Cook, McCaffrey, and Marlon Mack on my fantasy team.
Makes it kind of
my fantasy team stacked.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on to the next game. Looks like Matt LaFleur might be figuring out his offense because the Packers beat the Cowboys 34-24, and this was not a close game. Cowboys did come back in the second half, but it was pretty much a blowout at half. And Aaron Jones being let loose, 107 yards, 4 touchdowns, and it seems like they didn't have any answer. And if Aaron Jones keeps this up with an elite quarterback and Aaron Rodgers, it's going to be pretty tough to stop this defense. Aaron Rodgers, who had 231 yards, no touchdowns. So I have to see, combined with that good defense for once, 3 interceptions. What do you think, Marco?
Yeah, Aaron Jones does have 4 rush touchdowns. Obviously something he's not going to be able to do game in, game out. Yeah. But being able to carry the ball 19 times for over 100 yards and even getting a touchdown or 2 a game, and if that Packers defense can hold up against a high-powered Cowboys offense like that, and compared to other high-powered offenses later in the season and come playoff time, obviously that's going to take a lot of stress off Aaron Rodgers, who has been the offense for the past few years now.
Yep.
And we mentioned in the earlier podcast, it's really been all defense and no Aaron Rodgers, and that's what's been keeping him afloat. Kind of similar like over in New England. But yeah, if Aaron Jones can do this, then they have offense and defense, and Rodgers will just kind of do his thing. He was only sacked twice, threw no interceptions.
Yep.
Like I mentioned, he had no pass touchdowns. But again, if that run game's like that and the defense is going to stay consistent, if everyone can stay healthy, it takes a lot of stress off Aaron Rodgers, and he'll only have to come up clutch come playoff time. So I think the Packers are looking real hopeful. They just got to stay healthy, I think.
Yeah. Moving on to the next game, can we skip the Chiefs? Do we have to talk?
Oh, we're going to talk about them Chiefs.
We're going to
talk about them Chiefs.
Oh my goodness, I got too many Colts friends giving me all the crap about how bad my Chiefs are. Well, guess what, guys? We're still 4-1. Okay, Mahomes did roll his ankle. It was kind of hard to see him play because he rolled his ankle. I was like, maybe we should take him out because you don't want to risk the whole season over this one game. He had 321 yards, 1 touchdown. And yes, I may be making excuses, okay, but his 1 touchdown and that earlier drive when they were running down the field, he was on the run most of the time, so he does need his ankle. I mean, it also helps with your throwing form. A lot of our guys were injured. Watkins was out with his hammy, was hurt. Our off defense was banged up. 2 starters and a linebacker were out for the game. And the Colts took advantage. I mean, before this game, oh my goodness, the lineman had a hat that was saying "run the ball." Mm-hmm. So the O-line knew already that they were better than our rushing defense, which without the backups being in was 30th in the league. So Mac had a field day, 132 yards, and now our defense did have some plays. We did get some takeaways. Honey Badger, Tyrann Mateo had a pretty good pick on Brissett, but it wasn't enough. But I think once our guys get all healed up, we'll come back. You know, Tyreek Hill will be back next week. Hopefully, we'll come back. I didn't actually pick them, but that's another. We'll talk about that later. But yeah, the Chiefs were pretty banged up, so hopefully they can.
I've just been waiting for the breaking point for the Chiefs, and there it was. Is when they face a good defense. And Indy's defense wasn't all that great going into this week. We knew they had some guys. We knew they were a solid defense, but when they really show their true potential, the Chiefs look a little shaken up. They weren't really prepared for that, I don't think. The offense was a little scared, and Mahomes was getting angry at his team. We don't see that a lot. We don't see his emotions come out a lot. If you would have shown me Brissett throws for 151 yards and no touchdowns and an interception on paper, I would have thought, oh, the Chiefs probably smothered the Colts.
Yeah.
But Brissett runs in for a touchdown, the only touchdown for the Colts, and they managed to win the game. Defense stayed composed. They did their thing against Kansas City. Colts were just well prepared. They were the better team coming into this, or at the end of the day, because they watched their footage. Yeah. Chiefs thought they were going to be able to walk all over this Jacoby Brissett backup quarterback.
Yeah.
And the Colts they remained calm under pressure.
But if you look later in that game, Mahomes did have a lot of chances to go down the field. The defense did get a couple stops near the end of the game. It was just that, like, the one time when Mahomes was working out of his own backfield, he got hit by his own lineman, and his ankle barely got touched, and he was already limping. And that pass was way over the wide receiver, which he was aiming for. So Mahomes is definitely off in that game. Defense did give him a couple chances like this. I mean, the Colts could have blew us out in this game easily, but there were a couple plays, like I mentioned with Mateo near the goal line, that stopped them. But yes, they definitely beat us fair and square. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that they cheated or something.
It was a good game. It was a really good game for the Colts.
Yeah.
Really for their defense, because again, Brissett didn't have that great of a game. Marlon Mack didn't even rush for a touchdown, but he did have 132 yards, but it was on 29 carries, which they cannot do day in, day out, because again, running backs can't take that many hits. They're gonna die a little bit. So, I mean, it was a good win for the Colts, obviously, and I think the Chiefs need to rebound and not underestimate. Maybe I feel like maybe they underestimated this Colts team a little bit. I can't remember exactly what I was going to say, but I guess we'll just leave it at that.
All right.
Colts won.
All right, next game, Browns at 49ers. Kind of a shocker, 3-31. 49ers, their defense, we can't sleep on it anymore. They're starting to show up in stats. They're second in yards per game allowed. They allowed 0 touchdowns, rushing touchdowns so far. Second in passing yards allowed, and best pass completion. So the other quarterbacks have had their worst pass completion, if you get what I'm saying, out of all the teams. And then third in takeaways. So this defense, and they've been playing against good teams. They like the Browns. And I think last week they played against the Steelers with Mason Rudolph and other weapons on that defense, on that offense, and they gave up the ball a lot and still won that game. So I think the 49ers are starting to shut some people up and by getting wins, because being one of the two only undefeated teams in the NFL against the Browns, who are up and down, but they're not a team that you can just walk over. But that defense made Mayfield only have 8 of 22. And I had to double check that. I mean, 8 of 22, that's pretty bad. Like, yes, it's the NFL and you're playing against NFL defense, but at the same time, you need to show up. Like, that's pretty horrible. What do you think?
Yeah, Baker Mayfield coming off of a solid rookie season, one of the best rookie quarterback seasons, especially coming out after not even starting like the first 7 games.
Most touchdowns by a rookie in the season.
And like you said, he only completes 8 of 22. He throws for 100 yards, no touchdowns, 2 picks. Atrocious.
And he had 2 fumbles as well.
And 2 fumbles. Atrocious game from Baker Mayfield. Odell Beckham Jr. only 2 catches, 27 yards, no touchdowns. These last 2 games here real quick, he total 4 catches for 47 yards and no touchdowns. He's only had 1 touchdown catch on the entire season and only 1 game over 100 receiving yards. Odell's looking terrible. Baker is looking absolutely terrible, looking like a third-string quarterback.
Pretty much.
I called it, and I called it. I just want to say, I saw the sophomore, something coming. I didn't see Odell playing this bad. That's tough. But the 49ers took advantage. I didn't know about the Niners either, really, coming into this game. True. The Browns come off a win against the Ravens, big win. They put up 40 on the Ravens, and then they come in, and the Niners look legit, especially that defense. The Niners really capitalized on the opportunity. I don't know what's up with this Brown squad. Baker and Odell got to figure it out. Head coaches got to figure it out, but they can't lose like that.
On? I think it might be more on
I mentioned last podcast. It's all on Baker. I mean, it's all on Baker.
I did mention, like we've mentioned, the Mayfield only has one kind of pass, and that's the bullet pass.
I think
NFL defenses are looking at the film and being like, yeah, he can't throw any other kind of pass. So if we just stand in front of our guys, they're gonna block everything.
And I don't know if maybe it's the offensive line, because a lot of times I'm seeing Baker get hurt, getting hurried. I mean, I know the Niners have a great D-line, but I mean, all season, all the highlights I've seen from Baker, he's hurrying to get it out, and that's why most of his passes are bullet passes, because he's afraid. He's getting rushed. He's got to get the ball out. But 8 for 22, 100 yards, 2 picks, 2 fumbles from a starting quarterback. You're Baker Mayfield, and that's on Baker. Yep. That's all on Baker. If Odell only catches 2 passes. Let's see how many targets he had. He had 6 targets. He did have a few drops. I was watching the game. He did have some pretty bad drops. But still, that is on Baker. You got more than one receiver. You only got one quarterback, unless you want to put the backup in to do just as bad as Baker did. So it's really on. And I know the coach has been a big problem. A lot of other ESPN analysts have been saying that the coach is a big issue. But, I mean, still, Baker. What are those numbers? It's ridiculous.
I mean, Browns defense couldn't also stop the 49ers run game, especially with the misdirection. I mean, Kyle Shanahan, we already knew he's a great offensive coordinator, and now you're starting to see that, or great offense coordinator, and now you're starting to see his handiwork in their plays. They had 275 yards, 40 attempts at rushing, 6.9 per attempt. So by putting the pressure off of Jimmy G, who he's coming back off of his injury, starting to prove himself. He was showing up. He was 20 of 29, 181 yards, 2 touchdowns. So, I mean, the coach realizes that you got to have both. And if you're unpredictable, then especially a young team like the Browns, who don't have as many veterans, they have a couple guys of their talented guys. Some of them are injured, like Denzel Ward. It's going to be easy to blow them out in this game like this. So that tough loss for the Browns. We'll have to see if they can recover. I'm ready to move on to divisions.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about how the divisions are looking right now at this point in the season. We'll start with the AFC East. We'll kind of touch base on all of them here.
Yep.
AFC East includes the Patriots, who are 5-0, Bills 4-1, and the Dolphins and Jets 0-4 apiece.
So
really
high or really low.
It's coming down to the Patriots and Bills. I'm going to say the Patriots finish the season out top of the division yet again for the 300th straight year. Which is unfortunate, and I hate to say it, but I mean, they're going to play the Bills one more time this season. They're probably going to beat them again.
It could be their only loss. Probably the Pats, I think, will lose a couple more games. They got a tough schedule in the next couple games after their next 3, which is like Baltimore, Chiefs, Ravens.
I think they also have Dallas this year too, maybe one time.
So they're gonna run into some roadblocks, but I think they do win this division. Outside of the Bills, there's not much competition. Right. I mean, both the Dolphins and Jets are nosediving. So, definitely easy. Not that hard to pick this division.
AFC North, we got the Ravens at 3-2, Browns 2-3, Steelers 1-4, Bengals 0-5. I think this is an easy road for the Ravens if they just go back to putting it together like they did in their first 2-3 games. Browns are looking absolutely terrible. We just covered them. Steelers are 1-4. They're on their third string quarterback.
Yep.
Bengals 0-5. We talked about them. They're probably the second, third worst team in the league. It's a cakewalk for the Ravens. I say take it easy.
Yep.
Don't stress out Lamar too much. Don't stress out that defense too much. But finish the season at least 9-7. I think even that will get them the division leaders.
Wins.
They should get 10, but don't worry too much. Come playoffs, then let's give it full effort. Obviously, let Lamar Jackson sit back in that pocket, but rest up on this offensive line. I think, like I mentioned earlier, that was the big issue for why Lamar had to carry that thing like 17 times and this and that. So allow Lamar to be able to sit back in that pocket and flick his wrist like he said he wants to and not have to run that ball come playoff time. They'll be okay.
Out of all the divisions, this one I've decided as the worst. Outside of the Ravens, who themselves have been stuttering. I mean, they had that blowout against the Browns. Browns, even their quarterback situation, you're not quite sure. Steelers, I mean, Mason Rudolph needs to prove himself, win a couple more games. And honestly, he hasn't been healthy. I mean, he just got knocked out. So, I mean, he needs to hopefully come back healthy. And then the Bengals are 0-5. So looking at most of their majority, all of these guys, you can have questions about each of these teams. There's no elite team in this group, so that's why I got to put this division as the worst. And then the Ravens are most likely going to win this one. Unless Mayfield figures out how to throw in different ways besides a bullet pass. I mean, I know I keep harping on it, but like it's frustrating to see that like all the time. And then you turn the channel and see like Chase Daniel. I mean, sure that it's going to be off, but it's a different kind of throw. Like so. It's hard to see.
Yeah, the AFC North has no offensive line on either team.
Much.
I mean, we mentioned it multiple times already. AFC South, Houston Texans 3-2. This gets a little more interesting down south.
That's true.
The Colts 3-2 as well. Jaguars 2-3. Titans 2-3. I'm gonna say it comes down to the Texans and Colts. I think the Colts, they can be all hyped over this Chiefs win, but they really need to be focused on beating these Texans because those are probably going to be the final two teams that come down to it winning this division.
Yep.
Now, the Colts are still going to make a wild card even if they don't win this division. They're that good. They're good enough. But this Texans team is looking elite. If that offensive line can hold up for Watson, everything else is going to fall into place. I think I mentioned that in earlier podcasts. But, the Jags, they got Minshew Magic, DJ Chark, Jalen Ramsey's coming back. Yep. But still, this Colts and Texans, I feel like the Colts and Texans are another level, especially when we go down to the Titans, who are also 2-3. Yes, Mariota hasn't thrown a single interception, but he's bound to get injured. The amount of sacks he's taken a game, amount of hits he's taken a game. But the Texans and Colts, those are playoff teams right now.
Yeah.
The Jags and Titans still a little wishy-washy. I give it to the Texans, but the Colts need to really focus on beating this Texans team.
Yeah, out of all the teams, out of all divisions, this is probably the one where any one of those teams, if they won, you wouldn't be that shocked. Like if the Titans won, it would be kind of crazy, but it wouldn't be that crazy because you could see like Mariota going crazy, like finally being consistent, and if that O-line decides to block some guys, they could win this division. And especially if the Texans keep having their O-line messed up and the Colts, Brissett cools down and the Jags, Minshew doesn't cools down his magic. Yeah, maybe the Titans do win this division, but I'm not picking them. The team I got to go with is the Colts. I see them as just a solid all-around team, have an elite wide receiver in T.Y. Hilton, good run game, and their O-line is just ridiculous. I mean, out of most O-lines, they got to be at least top 2. I mean, they got a young guy in Quentin Nelson. They got veterans on that O-line. So I definitely got to go with the Colts, giving Brissett space to work with. And Brissett has proven when he does have space to work with, he can throw the ball. Accurate passes, not that many picks, doesn't mess up, and good coaching. I mean, that defense is playing good defense. I mean, they got a couple picks here and there. So I definitely got to go with the Colts in this division.
The AFC West. I think the obvious choice here is the Kansas City Chiefs. They are 4-1. They're much better than the rest of these teams in this division, which includes the 1-4 Broncos, the 2-3 Chargers, and then the 3-2 Raiders, a team I didn't think was going to be able to get over 500 once in this season. And here they are sitting a second behind the Chiefs at 3-2 after coming off of a huge win against the Bears, like we mentioned. But I think, obviously, like I mentioned, the Chiefs are going to be able to walk all over and win this division.
The Chiefs seem like they don't want to win at home. Right now, 1-1, but they're 3-0 on the road. So that's mostly holding up this record, number 1 right now. And Yeah, I gotta go with them. I think the Raiders could make some noise though. They could make this thing close if Derek Carr gets a couple more touchdowns. I mean, if he's able to recover, and if the if Josh Jacobs keeps running all over everyone, I could see the Raiders making it. Also, if that defense improves, if they get healthy, and if John Gruden keeps doing what he's doing, I mean, he's definitely brought this team back to being pretty good. They're probably better than they were before. So they could make it interesting, get it into a wild card, but I got to go with the Chiefs in this division.
The NFC East. Cowboys 3-2, Eagles 3-2, Giants 2-3, Redskins 0-5. Pretty interesting. The Eagles come off this last week with a big win. Their defense outperforms any other. The week prior, Jordan Howard, 3 rush touchdowns. We all know Carson Wentz when he is 100%.
Yep.
He is a top 10 quarterback in this league, if not top 5 when he's at his full potential. So if the Eagles can put it all together, sure, the Cowboys come off of a loss to the Packers, a game that I picked the Cowboys to win. And Cowboys looking a little wishy-washy. I'm going to keep going back to that term. Eagles look like they can win this division. I think the safe pick here is the Cowboys. I'm going to stick with them. Giants have no shot. Redskins are 0-5, have 0% chance of winning this division. But it's really going to come down to the Cowboys and Eagles, just like over in the AFC South, Texans-Colts. It's a two-headed monster. It's a two-headed beast.
I mean, pretty much. With the NFC East, this has got to be my runner-up for worst division because there have been questions about pretty much the Cowboys and the Eagles. They've been wishy-washy, like Marco said. We saw them against the Saints, pretty much lay an egg. I mean, they weren't shut out, but they played pretty badly in that game. Ezekiel Elliott hasn't been hitting his usual averages. Dak Prescott was kind of hot in 1 or 2 games, but kind of cooled down. But I gotta go with the Eagles in this one. I kind of trust Carson Wentz more. Yes, their wide receivers dropped a couple passes in their losses, but I got to trust that defense, especially showing up. Yes, it wasn't against a good team, but 10 sacks is still 10 sacks. And the Eagles are never out. They always make it interesting with Jordan Howard. Jordan Howard is on that team, so he can run it up the gut. So they got more weapons on that team. And, I think they can turn it on and win this division.
NFC North. Green Bay Packers are 4-1, Lions 2-1, Bears 3-2, Vikings 3-2. So no team under 500 or even at 500 in this division. It's looking like a big time race. Again, Packers looking insane if the defense can stay consistent. If Aaron Jones can stay healthy, if they can keep feeding him the rock and he can keep doing his thing. Obviously, 4 touchdowns isn't going to happen over and over every single game. But I mean, if everyone can stay healthy and they can take a lot of that stress off Aaron Rodgers, Packers will probably come out on top, but I do think that the Lions, I think we all can agree that the Packers are going to win this division.
Yeah.
It's really a debate on who's going to finish second.
Yeah.
And the Lions look solid, in my opinion. I'm big on the Lions this year. I think the Samson. I think the Bears actually might, looking at it right now, might finish bottom of the division.
Really?
Vikings look solid. The defense looks solid. Dalvin Cook's obviously going to do his thing. Unless he gets hurt, then they're down the drain. But Kirk Cousins, that was one good game so far this season. We'll have to see how consistent he can stay. But the Lions, I don't know. I think they're my pick for second in the division this year.
Okay. Hot take right there. I got to go with this one for my pick for best division. I mean, each team looks pretty solid. The Lions did take the Chiefs to a close game, so their team is looking tough there. And all the other teams have good defenses. Their quarterbacks are okay. Like Aaron Rodgers is great. All the other ones are average, but I mean it's better than backup. So I got to go with the Packers, obviously. And for second place, this one's kind of hard because the Lions have been shaky. I mean, that defense isn't quite as reliable as we hope with Matt Patricia being the coach. And then the Bears, in this last game, they need a quarterback. I mean, they need Mitch Trubisky to come back. So we'll have to see if they can hold out till he does. And then for the Vikings, Kirk Cousins just mostly is running around. But because of Dalvin Cook and because of that defense and the offensive weapons, I got to go with the Vikings. Yes, Kirk Cousins is playing horribly, but I got to go with the safe pick. I think Dalvin Cook can keep doing what he's doing. And I think that might open up for Kirk Cousins. And if he can hopefully learn how to run around and not get sacked, I think that the Vikings can pick up a couple more wins than the rest of the teams besides the Packers.
The NFC South, probably the most interesting division in the entire league. We got the Saints at 4-1. They don't have Drew Brees, but they're winning with Teddy. Panthers at 3-2. No Cam Newton. Christian McCaffrey has more total yards than the entire Jets squad. Buccaneers 2-3, but they're looking like a good team. They're looking better than average. And then the Falcons 1-4, who have absolutely zero defense, probably going to finish bottom of the division. But I don't know. I want to say the Bucs finish. I think I think we all agree again that the Saints probably finish atop of the NFC South. But if Cam Newton comes back and thinks that it's his team and doesn't allow Christian McCaffrey to do his thing, because Kyle Allen's coming in and they're doing he's doing what he has to do. I mean, Cam Newton was trying to make it his team. Like, obviously, we all thought it was his team. The injuries, the poor reads, the miscommunications, really we're tying him down. Kyle Allen's kind of got a similar situation like over in Indianapolis with Jacoby Brissett, where he's coming in and doing just enough, but that just enough, really, it is just enough. It's not like, usually when you hear just enough, enough doesn't cut it, but, I mean, he's doing what he has to do. Christian McCaffrey is the leader of the team, and I think Cam Newton has to take a step back and realize that. And feed McCaffrey more, let the offense run through him. Hopefully he can stay healthy. Hopefully the Panthers defense can play like they played this week, enough to top off Minshew Magic and DJ Chark's huge game. But Cam Newton, once he comes back, which we know is sooner rather than later, especially, come playoff time, if it is a wild card game for the Panthers, they're going to have to run that thing through McCaffrey more than Newton. But yeah, I think the Saints do finish top of the division, but the Buccaneers are looking like they might creep to second.
Yeah, the Saints right now 4-1. They're 3-0 at home. Like, it's pretty tough to beat them at home. Right now, though, I gotta go. I do understand with Cam Newton. Actually, they might stick with Kyle Allen. I mean, if Cam Newton especially continues to rest, I mean, you might have to see how good Kyle Allen is. I mean, he hasn't been anything earth-scorching, but he's been good enough. They've been winning games, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I think right now, especially with Cam Newton not being that good, I mean, if we remember from earlier in the season, he wasn't playing that well, and it was there were questions about moving on from him. And so I think I got to go with the Panthers on this one. I think unless Cam Newton comes back, if Cam Newton does come back and Jameis Winston continues to be hot, then I got to go with the Bucs. But as of right now, with the teams right now, I got to go with the Panthers for second place.
I agree. NFC West, very interesting. 49ers 4-0, Seahawks 4-1, Rams 3-2, and then the Cardinals 1-3-1. I don't know. This is hard to pick. Yep. 49ers are looking legit. The defense, especially, like I mentioned, they're looking promising. But I don't know. I feel like they're going to lose a few games when it comes down to it. I want to pick the Seahawks with MVP candidate Russell Wilson in the backfield to win this division. Rams, a little too wishy-washy, man. I'm going to keep going back to it. They lose to the Buccaneers big time. They allow, just not even big time, but they allow 55 points from Jameis Winston and the Buccaneers. Rams don't look like they can, unless they really turn things around. They're throwing 50 passes a game. Yep. Gurley is going to get hurt like this week. You mentioned he might be out. I'm going to pick the Seahawks to win the division. I feel like the Niners aren't going to be able to keep this going for too long, but they are pretty legit. Might make it to the or they probably will make it to a wild card. Might win the wild card, but I'm going to go ahead and pick MVP Russell Wilson and the Seahawks.
Yeah, this division I got to pick for the runner-up for the best division because besides the Cardinals, most of these teams are solid and they can be pretty tough opponents. But at the same time, the Rams have been known to be a bit wishy-washy, but they are the Super Bowl runner-ups. They still got talented players on that team. I think the main problem, though, with the Rams is that it's especially considering that it's been consecutive weeks that Jared Goff has gone for about 50 or more attempts, is that their passing is more of a philosophy, similar to like how the Rockets in basketball like shoot the three all the time, even if it kills them. I think it's the same with the Rams. They're going to keep passing the ball even if it kills them. There's got to be one team that takes it to the extreme, and especially because they're now forced to do that now that Gurley is hurt and they don't have any elite. They don't have an MVP level running back behind Gurley. So I think the Rams right now need to maybe go back to the drawing board and figure out maybe we shouldn't pass as much. And maybe they will turn it on the rest of the year. I don't think so. And I got to agree with what Marco said. I do think the Seahawks will win this one, win this division. They've got a veteran quarterback in Russell Wilson. He's still making plays, even with average wide receivers and a pretty rough defense. He's still getting it done, 4-1 right now. And I still haven't trusted Jimmy G. I still don't trust the 49ers. I mean, They did look great against the Browns, but there could be a good defense, veteran guys who maybe don't get fooled by the misdirection and are able to shut them down, or maybe some crazy scorching offense like the Chiefs or Ravens can give him a couple more else. So I got to go with the Seahawks in this division. I think we're moving on.
I think we're going
to predictions.
The last what's the word I'm looking for? Last segment of the day.
Yep.
The predictions for Week 6. Samson, go ahead and kick us off.
All right, first game, which is today, is Giants at Pats, and this isn't my lock of the week, but if there was a runner-up, it pretty much would be. Got to go with the Pats on this one. Danny Dimes has kind of cooled off from the first game, and that defense is still as good as it always is, and it's in Gillette Stadium, so not much to argue here.
This is my lock of the week. I'm going with the Patriots. Obviously, I think it's a universal pick. Giants, like I mentioned, without Barkley, without Shepard, without Ingram, unless Danny Dimes is Danny Magic, I don't know. This Patriots defense is going to smother that Giants beat-up offense. It's going to be a blowout. My lock of the week, Patriots over Giants.
All right, next game is the Panthers at Buccaneers. And this game is honestly like the coin flip of the week because I could see either team winning this, especially if Jameis Winston goes off for like 3 or 4 touchdowns. But I got to trust Christian McCaffrey running over this defense. Yes, they have some good guys on that D-line who can get a couple sacks. But in terms of rushing, I don't think that defense is quite prepared for a guy as Christian McCaffrey's level. And especially if McCaffrey's getting the rest he needs, which he is, why not by sitting out today? I got to go with the Panthers on the road in this one.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Panthers as well. Like you said, it's the coin flip of the week probably. Buccaneers are at home. I can definitely see them taking it, especially if Winston continues to prove us wrong. But, if McCaffrey's as healthy as ever, if Kyle Allen's doing that just enough, if that defense plays like they did last week, I think it's fair to pick the Panthers here, but could definitely see the Bucs win. And this is a big statement for the Bucs this week if they can end up being 3-3, tying with the Panthers for the same record, right behind the Saints.
I think they would be ahead of them because of head-to-head.
Oh, okay, yeah.
They'd be ahead of them.
Then, this is a big week for the Bucs. But I'm going to go with the Panthers, but, could definitely see the Bucs winning.
All right, next game is the slugfest of the week, maybe of the year. Got the Redskins at the Dolphins. Hey, so one team's got to win. All right, I guess one.
Well, they might tie. You never know.
You never know. It might be 0-15-1, I guess, at the end of the year. But I got to go with the Redskins on the road. I honestly don't know maybe the Dolphins could win this one. Devontae Parker has some crazy game. But I got to go with the Redskins. I think that they're slightly better. Maybe
no, come on. It is in Miami, but I've said this multiple times. The Redskins are decent, dude. I know they're 0-5.
Okay.
I know they're 0-5. And that looks terrible. They've had some tough opponents. Jay Gruden's a bad head coach. The front office all should be fired, especially the president. All we've ever known the Redskins is bad and Sean Taylor.
Pretty much.
That's it. So, yes, the Redskins are 0-5. But I promise you the Redskins are winning this game. Case Keenum's back. He's throwing for over 300 yards
true.
easy.
You have Case Keenum.
Maybe an interception. Maybe.
Maybe.
I give him 3 pass touchdowns. I give the running backs 2 touchdowns total. I give the receivers a couple receivers for over 100 yards receiving, a few touchdown receptions, obviously, with Case Keenum going for 3. Yeah. The defense is going to walk all over that Dolphins' poor offense.
Probably.
It's going to be a good win for the Redskins. They're going to have a good time. They're going to have a lot of fun down there in Miami. I'm going with the Redskins.
All right. Next game got the Saints at Jags, and I think this one will be a pretty good game to watch. But especially with Minshew Magic kind of dwindling, I got to go with the Saints in this one. Teddy Bridgewater has been getting it done. Sean Payton has been figuring out game plans. And against the Jags, it will be harder with Jalen Ramsey coming back. But hopefully they'll find a way with running the ball more often. And, I think they'll continue this win streak with Teddy Bridgewater.
It'll definitely be a good game. Jalen Ramsey might be coming back. It is in Jacksonville. If Minshew Magic can stay consistent, if DJ Chark can stay consistent, I can definitely see him taking this with Teddy Bridgewater being the quarterback over there in NOLA. But I'm going to go ahead and pick the Saints here. They look like they're on a roll. They look like they figured it out with Teddy. And I just still have never really had a whole lot of confidence in the Jaguars after they just after last season when we thought they had the best defense ever, and then they just were terrible.
It was Bortles.
Ever since then, it was Bortles. He's one of the worst starting quarterbacks ever. But ever since then, I've just lost all confidence in the Jaguars. it is going to be a good game. I could see the Jaguars coming out on top. It's going to be a lot of back and forth. Saints look like they're on a roll. I'm going with New Orleans.
All right, next team is Bengals at Ravens, and this is my lock of the week. Yes, the Ravens did look a little sus like 2 weeks ago, or last week. Yeah, 2 weeks ago. But Bengals have pretty much no one on that team. John Ross is out. I mean, that defense is going to have a heyday. And I'm pretty sure that D-line doesn't have anyone good on there or anyone average even. So I think they'll be able to run all over them, especially with Lamar Jackson running and Mark Ingram running. They'll have a great day at home. They'll be able to find their feet again and get this game.
I agree. I think the Ravens are going to take it. Not my lock of the week, but the Ravens have looked sus these last couple of weeks. It's been a little wishy-washy, people, but it is the Bengals. If I've said anything on this podcast, it's that the Bengals are absolutely terrible this season. Like you mentioned, no John Ross. Absolutely no defense. They're 0-5. It is in Baltimore. Ravens got to take it. There's no doubt.
Yep. Next game is Seahawks at Browns. And after the beatdown, it'd be interesting to see. Maybe the Browns come back because usually they play best, especially Mayfield under all that hate.
Mm-hmm. And they're at home.
Exactly. But there's a reason why I'm bringing up all reasons to why they would win, because they're going to lose. I see the Seahawks winning this one. Russell Wilson is going to get it done against that not great secondary. And, he'll get sacked a couple times, and maybe the Browns could make it interesting. But I got to go with the Seahawks.
I agree. I'm going with the Seahawks as well. It is in Cleveland, like you mentioned. Baker and the Browns do well under pressure. But the Seahawks are a much better team coming into this week. Russell Wilson, again, MVP candidate. He's going to continue to prove his case as to why he deserves MVP this year and continue to impress. I'm going with the Seahawks. No doubt in my mind they take the win in Cleveland.
Next game is Eagles at Vikings. And especially after those 10 sacks, that D-line is definitely going to put the pressure on Kirk Cousins. And we already know when Kirk Cousins is under pressure, he can't do anything. So I got to go with the Eagles in this one. I think it'll be interesting to see how many more sacks they'll get this week. And Carson Wentz throwing all over that defense. Now, that defense is solid usually, so he'll have to maybe work for it. But they still got Jordan Howard, so if they're able to mix it up with that run game, we'll have to see but probably Eagles will get it done.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to pick the Eagles. It'll be a really fun game to watch. It is in Minnesota. This is a game where the Eagles are going to really have to put it all together. Wentz is going to have to do his thing. Howard's going to have to do his thing. The defense is going to have to do their thing. They're going to have to put it all together as a team. I'm going with the Eagles. I think they're going to be able to do it. They're going to have to get it done over there in Minnesota. I don't think Kirk Cousins is going to have enough against that Eagles defense. I'm going with Philadelphia.
And they'll have to figure out how to stop Dalvin Cook. I mean, how could I forget him? Next game, and I really, 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 really don't want to make this pick, but I got to go with the upset of the week against my guys. I hope I'm wrong, but the Texans are going to beat the Chiefs at home. So far, Chiefs haven't been good at home, and that offense looks scorching hot, and against our not very good secondary. I mean, Mateo, Honey Badger, Sorsen, they can do some things, but our secondary really doesn't look that good. And Watson, maybe they figured out how to pass block, and now with a couple of our D-line being hurt, I mean, but Watson will still have to earn it. Mahomes is still Mahomes. We got Tyreek Hill back, still got Kelsey. Watkins, I think, is questionable. Not quite sure if he will be there, but we still have Robinson. So it's going to be tough for the Texans to win, but I think they do get the win, especially with the defense being so banged up and already not being that great not already being that good.
Yeah, another real interesting game this week. I'm going with the Chiefs, and here's why. I don't think they're going to be able to lose back-to-back games, especially at home with those loud fans, with Pat Mahomes there. It's going to come down to at the end of the game. Mahomes is going to lead this game-winning drive with those fans on his side, or the Chiefs are going to be ahead. Watson's going to choke because again, those fans are just too loud. I just don't think the Chiefs are going to be able to lose back-to-back games, especially now at home. But the Texans last week, Deshaun Watson was going up against a poor defensive line this week, up against another poor defensive line. If that offensive line can hold up, Watson's going to be able to do his thing, but I really just have to go with the Chiefs. I don't think they're going to be able to lose at home back-to-back.
All right. Well, hopefully that makes me kind of feel better, but I still got to go with the Texans in this one. Next game, Falcons at Cardinals, and I think the Falcons get their second win of the year.
Really?
Yeah, actually, I know the Cardinals did get their one game. They are kind of hot, but that offense for the Falcons, I think Matt Ryan, he has put up like ridiculous numbers of yards, and I think he gets it done with that pretty good wide receiving core, probably top 5 in the league. And I think they'll get it done in this game on the road.
I'm taking the Cardinals at home. I think Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray, they're going to have a heyday. They're going to be throwing all over the Falcons' defense. David Johnson's going to be running all over the place. Larry Fitzgerald's going to have a heyday as well. But don't get me wrong, Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, they're going to have a heyday as well. They're out there putting up the numbers. They're not putting up the wins necessarily. I'm going to take the Cardinals in Phoenix. Cliff Kingsbury is really going to have a heyday against that defense.
And the next game would have been the upset of the week, but the 49ers are technically ahead of them in the division, so it's not really an upset. But I got to go with the 49ers against the Rams on the road. I think right now that defense is – right now that secondary apparently hasn't allowed any pass touchdowns or rush touchdowns, but they're still playing great. Without Gurley coming back, they're just going to have to drop back, which they probably would have anyway, because Goff is probably going to throw for 50 and only make 25. So right now, I just trust the 49ers more. I mean, I don't trust them that much, but that Goff hasn't been consistent yet, and those wide receivers, Cooper Kupp is playing well, but it hasn't amounted in wins, so we'll have to see, especially with with Kyle Shanahan's offense picking up points against a weaker defense. And they have a pretty good pass rush, but it might not be effective against the 49ers because they're mostly a running team, and that run defense isn't that good. So we'll have to see. But I think the 49ers got this one in the bag.
It is in Los Angeles. The Rams should have won last week. They missed the game-winning field goal against a good Seahawks team. I'm going with the Niners as well. This is going to be another statement game. This is going to determine whether they really are legit, or they're just somewhat legit. Yeah. This might be their first loss of the season. Like I mentioned, it is in Los Angeles, but no Todd Gurley. Could be a huge deciding factor. This is going to be a statement game for the Niners, whether they're truly legit or not. And if that defense can really capitalize on the fact that there is no Gurley and that Goff throws 50 passes a game, but only completes a select few, and continues to throw multiple interceptions a game and continues to get hit and rushed day in, day out. So, again, statement game for the Niners. I'm picking the 49ers.
All right, next game is your guys, Titans at Broncos. And right now, I got to go with the Broncos. I think that team is they're starting to heat up. That defense is starting to figure it out. Those offensive guys are starting to get in the groove. And if Joe Flacco can hit accurate passes to his guys, and maybe Manuel Sanders has a good game, I think they can get it done at home. They've played well at home, and especially with that crowd Mile High, got to go with the Broncos.
For once, I'm going to have some confidence in my team. I'm picking the Broncos in Denver. Titans played a little poor last week. It was against a good Bills defense, but Broncos seem like they're putting it all together. It's going to be in Mile High. I'm going with my guys for once.
All right.
I actually have a little bit of confidence in them.
Next game is the Cowboys at Jets, and this has to be like pretty close to being one of the locks of the week. I think Dak finally lets it fly because the last couple games he's been kind of iffy at the beginning and then showed up later. And hopefully they'll be able to – I think they'll get it done against a defense that has been okay but not great. And also that offense, which, I mean, right now is down to their third string. So probably look out for a couple huge sack totals this game. Guys maybe picking up 2 or 3 against a weak offensive line. So, yeah, I think the Cowboys get this easy one on the road.
I agree. I'm definitely picking the Cowboys, but I do want to say when I saw this game, I had to take a second look at it and really think before I circled the Cowboys.
Oh, okay.
As much as I hate on Sam Darnold, he is coming back. He's better than Simeon. He's better than Folk. He's below average, but he's still he's still all right. I mean,
Mark.
He's not bad. He's certainly not average, but
top 15.
Top 20, top 25 at best.
Agree,
top 25 on a good day.
Agree, top 20.
Top 25 on a good day. Sam Darnold is coming back. The defense is insanely average in New York. It is in MetLife. I do want to say that the Jets have a smidge of a chance.
All right.
They might surprise us all because the Cowboys offense, Zeke has been having to do it when Dak's not, and Dak's having to take care of the offense when Zeke's having an off day. So maybe today's the day that Jets defense really shows that the Dak's and Zeke's true colors, and they take advantage of that, and Darnold comes back and gets a win. I'm obviously picking the Cowboys, but I don't know, man. I think the Jets have a smidge of a chance.
This next game mostly depends on Rudolph's health. I got the Chargers winning at home against the Steelers. If Rudolph is 100%, though, I got to go with the Steelers. The Chargers like to give up leads, or they just come from behind and don't actually put it in and get the win. So I don't really trust the Chargers in this game, especially if they can lose to a team like the Broncos. Like, the Broncos played well that game, but it's not a great team. So if the Steelers have Rudolph 100% healthy and they're firing on all cylinders, got to go with them. But for right now, especially since it looks like Rudolph may not be 100%, may not play, got to go with the Steelers in this game.
I'm going with the Chargers. I think that Mason Rudolph, I mean, it looked like he died last week. So even if he does play, he's not going to be 100%. There's no way he's 100%. I think it's an easy win for the Chargers. The Steelers defense still is going to do their thing. They're still going to slow down that Chargers offense, but I mean, the Steelers are probably going to be on their third-string quarterback. He didn't look like anything crazy. He's a third-string quarterback for a reason. And like I mentioned, Mason Rudolph does play. He's probably going to get hurt again because it looked like he died. All right. It's going to be tough for the Steelers. I'm picking the Chargers.
All right. In the last game, got the Lions at Packers. And I think the Packers right now, they got everything going. They got a passing offense and Aaron Rodgers, great wide receivers, are pretty good, top 10 in Devontae Adams. They got a pretty good running back in Aaron Jones, and hopefully he can replicate that this week. And they got a pretty good defense, a solid, consistent defense. I mean, early in the year, Aaron Rodgers said he had a defense, and it was like, well, let's see a couple games, Raj. And now it seems like they're getting it done. So I think they'll get it done against the team in the Lions. Lions do have some good wide receivers in Galladay, speedy guys, and Stafford. I mean, he at least when he was playing against the Chiefs, he was clicking. I mean, they did have a bye. So we'll have to see if they can keep up that chemistry. But right now, I got to go with the Packers in Lambeau. I mean, it's pretty hard to beat them there, and I probably will be cold. So, I mean, Detroit, they're in a dome. They're in a dome stadium. I mean, you can put as much stock as you want in that, but some people consider that pretty important. Temperature does mess with some guys. So I got to go with the Packers.
I agree. I'm taking the Packers, especially since they're at home this week. And, again, they've been at least consistent throughout this entire season. If the defense, again, it all comes down to health. If the defense, they're really the Eagles when they all put it together. I mean, Rodgers is pretty much once this season. Aaron Jones and Jordan Howard remind me a lot of each other, and the defenses are there. When the Eagles' defense is on, they remind me a lot of the Packers' defense. I think the Packers, if they continue to put it all together like they have been, it's going to be an easy win for them, especially at home. I'm going with the Green Bay Packers.
All right. Got any more thoughts on this past week?
That's all I got, Samson.
All right. Well, thanks for listening.